because all of the rivers that flow into the SPA are triple size. So naturally, England have taken an approach that catchment on the Isle of Wight should be more specific to the river catchments affected that then drain into the SPA. The river catchment that drains into the SPA here is the Western Yar, and Thorley Brook drains into the Western Yar. So it travels along parallel to Thorley. It then goes under the bridge in, I can't remember the name of the road, at the end of Wilmingham Lane, and it goes behind the housing on Baldner Road, and then it connects directly into the Western Yar. So it's not about proximity, it's about which river catchment it is in.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I sense that we're moving into a more debate area of this application, but Councillor Lilly, you've raised your hand.
Got a quick question. I'm presuming there isn't, lamppost, light within the village, and there wouldn't be light along the pathway. Is that correct?
Thank you, Councillor Lilly. Mr. Chick.
So is that street lighting?
Street lighting. Oh, sorry, I forgot the word.
Yeah, I mean, it would come down to what was necessary by Island Road. So if through the condition process, Island Roads considered that lighting was required, then that would be a requirement. But it might be worth asking Mr. Troughton whether it's required.
Thank you, Mr. Troughton. Are you able to give a preliminary advice surrounding that?
Probably not at the moment on the issue of, as part of the technical approval, consideration will be given to the need to provide street lighting and whether it's required from highway safety reasons. So that would be addressed through the section 278 process.
Thank you. So in terms of weighing that in terms of light pollution and such, that would be within the scope of a matter such as this, even though it is outlined. Is that correct to say?
Yeah, it would all form part of the potential landscape impacts of the development. And obviously there is a lighting condition proposed for external lighting. So, potential mitigation measures. You'd be thinking, would it be an issue that would cause landscape harm with mitigation in place? So there are ways of mitigating obviously light impacts, but yes, that is something that committee can consider in the round when balancing up whether this development is acceptable or not.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chick. Councillor Price.
Thank you, Chairman. This will be a quick one. With regards to the public open space that the developer is effectively gifting to the community, sort of.
Is that the situation, Mr. Chick, that it's essentially a gift to the community?
Well, that would rely on the parish council taking the open space, but I think at this moment in time, I don't know who it would be managed by, but certainly the 106 would have to secure how that site was managed in terms of the open space.
Thank you. Supplementary.
Yeah, I mean, that was the next question really is, it's okay, the land being given for public use in perpetuity, but obviously you could end up with then a piece of land that's not managed at all and it becomes somewhere you can't even access because it's not looked after. So is there something that we can build into the any potential proposal that would allow for the future upkeep of that land? And also I wonder, I'm saying this without any knowledge of who manages or the group that manage the Millennium Fields, but I wonder, not them obviously managing that piece of land, but would there be any option for connectivity into that piece of land from the Millennium Fields? Because it just seems like, while it's very nice to offer that piece of land, if it was in my ward, I'd be foaming at the mouth to get it, to be honest. But but it looks like you would probably have to access it through the site by walking through the housing development to get to that piece of land. It would obviously be much more of a community benefit if you could access it from more than one place, is what I'm saying.
Thank you. Yes, that's a very good point. Mr. Chick, you were able to speak around that, particularly in terms of access and on what we might be able to option, if anything, regarding that. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'll just go back to the slides and try and get them to zoom through. It's not doing anything very quickly today. But you can see here the open space is alongside footpath S18 which is alongside the western boundary of the site. So that footpath would effectively be part of the open space. And obviously we would, if this was approved, we want to know how the footpath would be integrated into the open space. Would it be fenced? Would there be gates in that fence? That kind of thing. But ultimately, members of the public could enter the open space via the existing footpath that is there. In terms of the Millennium Green, there is land between it and the application site, so they don't actually abut one another at all. So if I go back to this slide, what you can see, let's get the pointer to work, is that secondary access to Hartsole Cottage is in between, plus actually the open space and the Millennium Green don't quite line up. So I'm not feeling confident that the two could be linked across there, particularly, certainly not by this planning application. But there would be public access via the right of way.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chick. I wanted to ask in relation to rights of way, as we're on that subject, the rights of way service at 7.81 have objected. Is it correct to say that the rights of way service, they are a constituent part of the council? Is that correct? Yes. What type, so they've come to the conclusion that it would considerably and adversely affect section 18. That's obviously couched in quite strong terms. I don't know whether they have, as it were, a taxonomy of harm, or if that's essentially a subjective judgment, but it's certainly a very strong one. I think speaks to Councillor Fuller's point regarding the generality of how it potentially improves the area.
So yeah, it is ultimately a subjective judgment from them, which they're entitled to make. And I think those comments really related to the development when it's going to be 16 houses. And so there were going to be potentially boundary treatments along a much longer section of the right of way. So there's two things that come into play here, really. Officers already aren't comfortable with the location of Unit 1 at the point of the cursor here. And the boundary treatment to that property would be in this location here. So what the report suggests is that actually Unit 1 needs to be moved across in order to protect the amenity of Teasle Cottage. And you'll remember those windows that look over onto the site. Part and parcel of that would be also potential to move the boundary treatments for Unit 1 across. So there was actually quite a wide section alongside the footpath where you could have a grass verge and then potentially a hedge planted or something like that for Unit 1. And that would be agreed for reserve matters if this was approved. But ultimately, yes, the sort of tunnelling effect to the right of way would be much lower than even shown on this reduced scheme, because we'd be expecting the boundary to move across and therefore leave a much wider section for the footpath. And our view is that it would only be a short section of footpath next to housing, which is already next to housing, and then it would open up into an area that would still be quite open and similar to the farmland in the area.
Thank you very much. I'm conscious, colleagues, that we've been in session for an hour and 40. I don't know whether anyone wants to have a comfort break or we will press on. I appreciate we haven't. Let's take a 10-minute break then, and we will reconvene at 5:51. Obviously, just as a reminder, do not speak about this application whilst you are on intermission. Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I make that time, so I will respectfully call us to order for the continuation of this application agenda item. Where we left things, we were still, I think, focused on questions, but I would suggest we move towards more of a debate, because I think ultimately there is a time constraint, and I certainly don't wish to push us, but it doesn't stop us from asking questions either. I don't know if there's anyone who wishes to commence. Councillor Price.
Thank you, Chairman. I know Wellow very well, and my children attended Shalfleet Primary School, as people will know, so I've got some good knowledge of that area. I've never lived there before, and I absolutely do take on board all the comments from the public speakers. I appreciate that there's you know, everywhere now is suffering from terrible flood risk, and we're all worried every time there's another development that it will make it worse. Sometimes we know, sometimes things do make it better, but usually water finds its way, doesn't it? And it always tends to cause more disruption. But there are some positives with this site, I have to say. With regards to the public open space, as I said, in my ward, I don't have the opportunity for that. In any development that comes up in my ward, I have no option. There's usually no possibility of some public open space coming available. So I think that is a really good plus point that's come alongside this application. I do absolutely understand the concerns with the road. Wellow Road is all down to how safely people drive through it, and often people drive through it too fast, don't they? And then you do encounter a bus or two, or you're encountering a HGV, or like's been said, the tractors with the trailers for the anaerobic digestion plant, which the perception of how fast they're going is really difficult, because they're huge and they're wider than anything else. And they make us all feel really uneasy, certainly on roads that are so narrow. But I want to reflect on something quickly, because this committee may remember a plan and application last year that was in my ward for a number of houses that is actually on a currently farmed field. It's a tenant farmer that's been there. His family's been there, fourth generation, for over 70 years. And this field that came forward to be developed, a relatively small development, but it's on on a road with no pavements. I was very grateful for the committee for turning it down, because we deemed that it was potentially unsafe for pedestrians. There was no real improvement that the public would receive from it. We were going to lose currently used farmland. The properties opposite are going to be overlooked. And it was turned down at this committee, and quite robustly. But it went to appeal, and the appeal was lost. It's cost the Isle of Wight Council a lot of money. It's left probably this committee feeling like that was quite a failure. But it just shows where we are in current times, where if we turn something like this down and we don't have the real robust reasons to do it, it will be overturned at appeal. And we often will lose the chance to have better things brought from it at the reserved matters stage. So I think I just wanted to say that, if I, on reflection, the development in my ward that we turned down, I've now really lost some of the teeth, I think, for the reserved matters stage on that, because essentially, they have got permission that's been rubber stamped by the planning inspectorate, and it's going to make it very difficult to really sort of, in my opinion, get the best out of it that we can now. So I think we must be mindful that if there isn't some really good, robust reason to turn this down, and I've read this report from end to end, and I think we're going to find it very difficult to find something. the one thing I would like to say, and I alluded to it earlier, was about the reduced affordable rental element. And I was wondering if we could look to, if there is a proposal comes forward, whether we could incorporate an increase in the discount for reduced affordable rental. I mean, is it at 20%? Am I right in saying at the moment? So could we go up to 30% on that? You know, I'm mindful there's probably a lot of people that live in that area that can't afford to rent. Certainly probably can't afford to buy, you know, children of maybe people that live in that area. But, you know, there may potentially be a possibility that they could afford to rent with some more reduced rental discount.
Thank you very much, Councillor Price. Are you able to speak to that, Mr. Chick, in terms of the reasonableness of increasing that discount and how it might withstand a challenge? Not at all. No, my apologies. I was overloading with information. The question essentially was, to what extent could we make deeper discounts in relation to rent? Would it be possible to depart from 20%, say, and what would be the margin of appreciation within which we could potentially, beyond it becoming unreasonable?
I mean, I can't really answer that question because I don't know how it affects the viability of the scheme, but ultimately the decision holder for anything in planning is the committee. And if committee makes the decision that something should be a 30% discount rather than 20, then officers will issue the decision with that as the requirement in the legal agreement, unless the applicant writes to us shortly after committee and says that's just not going to work for us, please go back to committee and report back what we said. But yes, ultimately, if committee makes a decision that it should be a 30% discount, then officers will work to put that in the legal agreement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chick. Councillor Fuller.
Thank you, Chairman. I have looked at the report. I've gone through it with a fine-tooth comb, and I disagree with you, Councillor Price. I think there are sound grounds to actually turn the application down. The key that I would be looking at is that, and it's quite key to the NPPF, anybody who has studied the NPPF will be absolutely aware that the NPPF only supports sustainable development. There is no way, in my opinion, that this development is in a sustainable location. You know, I'm comparing it with Landscape Lane, which you referred to. Landscape Lane has 6 buses an hour, which is within walking distance. This location doesn't. It has 2. It's to get to the location, to get to a bus stop. I know that the applicant is going to put in a pavement, which may or may not work, but that to me makes this very, very different from the application that you were talking to. I think, you know, one of the other things we have to look at as well as the NPPF is the fact that this is right in the middle of our countryside. It is a special part of the island. It has nothing within the proposal that, to me, helps to mitigate against the damage that it will have on the local landscape. It has no real features that will enhance this development. It will have an impact, in my opinion, on the national landscape. You can look down on the site from the downs where the national landscape is, and I think that there will be a significant impact. Anybody who's been a member of the planning committee for us or has been part of the planning committee as long as I have been, and have seen as many applications as I've seen over the years, will understand the impact that the wind turbines had in exactly the same location between 2 areas of AONB, as they were called then, National Landscapes now. So I think that there is a real issue to say that this does not meet policy SP5. The open space, queries about that. Again, there is an offer that there will be that open space will be looked after. Well, we're talking about 10 houses here. are we suggesting that those 10 houses are going to have the funds to be able to look after that open space? Where is that money going to come to? There is no information within the bundle that suggests that that will make that open space sustainable, able to be looked at, properly funded in perpetuity by the local community. The other issue that I have with this application is policy DEM 17, and that is highway access. If you look at policy DEM 17, the whole thrust of that policy is that we are looking at putting housing in sustainable locations. You have to be able to access properties, and the properties or access facilities that communities need to be able to get to. Not everybody will have a car. Not everybody will be able to get from A to B easily. Taxi services in this part of the island, unlike Landscape Lane, Councillor Price, doesn't necessarily have taxis to get to. So if you're elderly, you're infirm, you're living on this development, it can be very, very difficult to get to the facilities that you need. Therefore, I'll make the point that it also does not meet the criteria of policy DEM 17, which is there to promote sustainable transport. I also have concerns as well, and I'm sure that these can be overcome. Flooding. Although there is mitigation that officers are looking at putting within the report about reducing flooding on the land, and I'm sure that could happen. That comes with a cost. Anybody that was at the site visit on Friday will understand what a quagmire it can be in that whole area. You have a whole raft of small streams in the area that flows into the Newtown area. And again, that area, if you look at it and the impact that there is on nitrates on that area, it is of concern to me. So I would really like to have Natural England being able to put their hand up and say, this will actually help to mitigate against the impact upon nitrates on the Newtown estuary. And the other issue that I would like to see included and is something more firm about social housing in the local area. There is no social housing in the local area, and I think there is the potential for that to happen. Again, I'm here to make a decision based upon the facts that I have presented before me, and there is nothing here that actually says, yeah, this is going to enhance the local community, make the community a more sustainable area for new families moving into the area. So I cannot support this, and I will be recommending that we object to the application on grounds SP5 and and DM 17, as they do not meet those policy requirements of the core strategy, and look for a seconder. Thank you.
Seconded by Councillor Lee, is that correct? You were raising your hand.
If that's a proposal, I second it.
Very well.
And my particular thing is the pavement and the roadway. Nothing that is proposed for me will make that road safe. Unless you've got to have lighting, a variety of sort of stuff and TROs and things, and that's just not going to happen. And as Councillor Fuller has said, is what is being put. We have to look at what is being put in front of us, and I don't think that we've been put. So I second his proposal to object.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lilly. So we have a substantive motion proposed and seconded, but I will, with your indulgence, just allow other colleagues to have their say as well before we go to that. We have Councillor Andre, then Councillor Ward. Councillor Andre.
Thank you, Chair. In October 2024, members of the Planning Committee, and I think there were several members here that are present today, we had a visit to, I won't say what it was called, but we visited 3 sites that had already been built out, which was really, really useful, because sitting on Planning Committee, we see plans that come before us And we go and we look at, most of the time it's empty fields, and sometimes, you know, it can be quite hard to visualize. So it's really useful to actually go and see developments that have been built out. One of those developments was in a very similar setting to Wellow, but in a different part of the island. A very small development, but the actual design of it was superb. And it really did enhance and complement the character. So I know, because I've actually seen myself, and I know how hard our planning officers actually work, bearing in mind that this is an outline permission that has come before us, that there are many examples since I've sat on planning committee where the actual design officers have worked very closely with developers to ensure that good design comes forward. So in terms of the visual impact, we're talking about 10 houses here. We've heard already that officers have been talking to the developers about the potential of site 1. So we know that at this stage, things could be discussed and potentially, I say improved, but we don't have the design currently. So I know that there is the possibility that small developments can actually have good design that will enhance the local environment. Currently, and I've also read very much through the report that we've heard there's no mitigation for the surface water flooding. We've had the consultee comments on that, but also the fact that this development will put in, there will be mitigations. So I'm not convinced on the strength of the argument that I don't think it will cause any more flooding than is currently there. I think if anything, it will be more effectively managed. And as I alluded to earlier, I think the scope of that is wider, and there is a lot of work going on and a responsibility, I think, with Southern Water to actually support that. They have a responsibility to the island as well. I think the public space, and I do agree with Councillor Price that to have a site come forward where the developer hasn't tried to cram as many houses on as possible, and they've actually allowed for public space, is something to actually be welcomed. The decision making of members is all about balance, and on balance here, I would like to put a counter proposal forward that we approve the officer recommendation of conditional permission subject to conditions and the completion of a legal agreement. But I would like to put an additional element that the affordable houses are 70% for affordable rent at 25% discount. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Andre. Councillor Ward, you're proposing that as a formal motion?
I'm
okay.
proposing it's a formal motion.
you.
I look for
Is there a
seconder.
seconder?
Apologies, Chair.
Not at all. Seconded by Councillor Ward. Do you wish? I know you had a separate point, but you obviously can wrap it up into speaking to your seconding to.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. I'd like to question this assumption of unsustainability. You know, we have people who live there now, probably live there for generations. Their children go to school, they go to work, etc., etc. How come it's unsustainable? The single vehicle access of single lane. I mean, it's assumed that there's you can't get 2 vehicles down there. We've heard the Island Roads officer saying 4.8 metres. You know, we have roads on the island where you can literally only get one car down and you need pull-in spaces, lay-bys for cars to get that, and they're going through housing. So what's so terrible about this, that you can actually get two vehicles, a heavy vehicle and a car, side by side? We talk about the land that's been given away, who's going to maintain it? Who maintains it now? No one asked that question. So why is it unsustainable? I'm sorry, I just don't accept that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Walker. So we do have two substantive motions on the floor, as it were, but I will still, with a certain degree of indulgence, allow further debate if anybody wishes to make any comments. Councillor Price.
I was only going to add to Councillor Andre's proposal, whether if that was a proposal that we take a vote on, would she be willing to maybe add something in that the future maintenance of the new public open space would be sort of nailed down through the final approval, or at least by the reserve matters stage, because I would be nervous that land doesn't have any kind of condition for ongoing maintenance for the future.
Thank you very much,
I
Councillor
would
Price.
take that on advisement, but I would be mindful that I would not want to impose an obligation on the future owners of that development, bearing in mind that it's 35, well, there's going to be 4 affordable housing. That would put an undue financial pressure.
I believe there's something already within the conditioning which points or directs towards that. Mr. Chick, can you assist?
Yes, so management of the open space, it's one of the sort of draft heads of terms at the start of the report. So it refers to the open space, and yes, we would expect details of who would actually manage it. So I think that's a fair idea.
Thank you very much. Councillor Andre, you wish to speak to that?
Only as long as there's to who would manage it, yes. But can we just clarify whether or not that would incur a financial obligation?
Mr. Chick.
Yeah, I suppose it would, because the site would need some form of management company. The internal roads would need to be managed, so would the drainage, whatever is agreed if reserve matters came forward, as with the open space. So yes, I suppose there would be some sort of yearly service charge that would then need to cover that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Price, would you, in view of that, do you wish to make any comments?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't vote for adopting a new bit of public open space that isn't going to be managed. That would just be ridiculous, wouldn't it? Could I also refer to something that Councillor Fuller said, if that's okay? Sorry, so we don't normally sort of go back and forth across the chamber.
I think it's testament to the fact that this is a very finely balanced matter before us. I think we all have in approaching this struggled quite a lot with seeking to make, as Councillor Andre says, that very fine balance. So it's certainly a difficult one. Councillor Price.
Yeah, I mean, and it is a fine balance. I mean, it's very difficult to say that, you know, it almost sounded like Councillor Fuller was saying, you know, let's face it, as it's already been said, that I think Mr. Chick said that, you know, not at any point can you look at a field and think, oh, that'll look better with some houses in. That's clearly not how it works. But, you know, I live on Honey Hill, and once I've got a photo of that in 1935 when it was a farm, and you know, and it's now got, you know, 500 houses built on that farm, you know, it's you know, no one wants to see change, and I think we've been very careful to listen to everything that's been said, as we always are. I'm actually the longest standing member of this committee now. I know Councillor Fuller's been around longer than me, but I've been on this committee the longest, and we've had to take some really tough decisions over time. But we do have to take into account everything that the public bring to us, that the officers bring to us, that the other members bring to this table, and I think, you know, on balance, it would be very difficult for me to support your proposal, Councillor Fuller. From a popularity perspective, I think all the members of the public will think I'm lovely for saying no to it. But they won't think that in 6 months' time when it fails at appeal. You know, for us to approve it tonight with some good conditions, bring some extra community benefit in. You know, while the idea of the pavement, you know, may make people's blood run cold thinking that it's going to make the road more dangerous, but to some degree it's going to make it a lot safer. It's not perfect, of course it's not. But I think on balance, as Councillor Andre's proposal coming forward as indicated, you know, I'm going to support that. I think on balance, this isn't perfect, but it is a development that potentially can go ahead, and at the reserve matters stage, it could be made in consultation with the local member and the community. It could look really nice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Price. I'm just going to take advice. Any colleagues wish to speak further?
Sorry, Chair, just for
Yeah.
clarification, I take Councillor Price's point, and I accept that it would be beneficial to actually have management of that site. So I am willing to, but Councillor Ward's seconded. So if Councillor Ward's okay with that, I'm willing to add that in as well.
Certainly. I mean, I think obviously that issue speaks to potentially to the viability. So I don't know whether, in view of what Mr. Chick has said, whether Councillor Price, do you still wish to proceed with that suggestion?
Thank you, Chairman. I think it would be morally wrong for this committee to be looking to adopt a bit of open space as part of a development without some kind of maintenance plan for the future.
Thank you very much. Any colleagues wish to speak further to this? Councillor Cameron.
I can't consider this is generally sustainable housing. The report accepts it's not walkable to services and relies on an hourly bus. The Greenway is not delivered mitigation for school access. On water, the discharge pathway to Thorley Brook and the Solent means nutrient and drainage controls must be watertight and must have Natural England's consultation on it. I just had to look at when we were at the site visit, and I went past there today and it was flooded. And I think, oh, you've got 10 houses. How many people is that? How many showers is that? There is no drainage, southern water drainage or combined sewers, or it all goes into that brook. And it's flooded now. How are you going to do washing machines, baths, showers, and all of that go into there? So I'm sorry, I can't accept it.
Thank you very much. I think I will, at this juncture, set out my concerns, because I have, I think, essentially, like everyone here, very much struggled with this application. It is very finely
Can I
balanced.
just,
Yes.
in response to Councillor Cameron, combined sewers currently exist on the island, but new developments have to separate out. So it wouldn't all go into, just to be clear.
As a factual question, I will defer to Mr.
Yes,
Chick
because
on that.
sewerage will be
There is
dealt with.
no sewerage in relation to that. It's contained on sites. Yeah, thank you. Mr. Chick.
Yeah, so I believe the public sewer is, I think it's 700 metres from the site. So it's not sustainable financially for this site to extend the sewer to it. So yes, all wastewater from this site would be treated on site and then discharged to the Thorley Brook. Yeah, and then discharged to the Thorley Brook. There's no potential for it to go to a sewer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chick. My concerns are essentially in the area that Councillor Fuller has canvassed. And it's a difficult one because, as we say, there is this question, as Councillor Price rightly raises, regarding what happens potentially if it goes to appeal. We've obviously had the matter of Sandown Airport, which I think colleagues were very strongly of the view in terms of safety and highways. That seemed to be one of the main points on which we objected. and that was overturned at appeal. Councillor Andre raises that question of the balance that we have to strike. Now, generally, it would be on balance of probabilities, but I think, to my mind, and I'm probably straying outside of the area of policy, but I ultimately it always comes down to a decision maker as to where they're going to position their views, is that it should be a higher threshold when it comes to safety. For me, it would be beyond reasonable doubt if I could import that as a principle into our considerations. And I think I agree with Councillor Lilly that there are still concerns surrounding traffic. So I am tending in a particular way, but I'm very happy to hear further arguments. And is there anything that anybody else wishes to say? In which case we will go to the vote, I think. I'm just going to take advice. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Just to, if it may help committee, I think what I'm going to suggest through Chair that we do, so we are clear and for the avoidance of doubt, is that obviously officers have listened very carefully to the debate and the discussion, and through that process have tried to articulate those concerns, and thinking about what was tabled by Councillor Fuller for reasons of refusal, to translate those into reasons or potential reasons of refusal for you to consider as part of excuse me, your motion. So if you're happy, Chair, what I suggest is that if Mr. Chick is happy is to read out those potential reasons for refusal, and then I would also ask that officers are given the opportunity to give some further advice to help you consider the strength or otherwise in relation to reasons for refusal that may or may not, I'm still not quite clear, be in front of you in terms of the motion to refuse. So, for example, we've obviously had a very long and quite rightly so conversation around highway safety. But I think what I would be advising you is to bear in mind that you have your technical specialist advisors saying that this can be safe. To put forward a reason for refusal based on highway safety grounds, I feel I'm obliged to advise caution on that point. But I think if it's helpful, we'll ask Mr. Chick to go through the potential reasons for refusal, to then just be clear that everyone knows, and if particularly Councillor Fuller is putting forward the motion, is happy that it's been properly encapsulated. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bolger. I believe, Councillor Fuller, essentially your concerns centred around SP5 environments and DM17 highways. Is there anything you wish to add?
What I was going to say, Chairman, was I understand that for a successful appeal, we need to have the support of our technical officers. And the two grounds that a lot of members raised, one about flooding and two about highway safety, we would need to receive the support of those officers. At the moment, I don't think we have that support. However, we do have the support of rights of way on DM17, which is highway access, sustainability of travel, and we do have officer support there. So what I'm looking at is it's sort of like a two-tier response. The strongest grounds I consider that we have to refuse the application is policy SP5, which is the impact upon the countryside, and policy DM17, which is on some of the issues that cause concerns regarding highways. What I wanted to build onto that was, yes, there are buses that may pass once an hour, but in addition to the buses, there are delivery vehicles, there's tractors that regularly use those roads, there's horses that use those roads. Those roads are considered to be they're not formally quiet lanes, but quiet lanes. People go horse riding, and I think that it would create additional dangers on those roads, and therefore meets the argument for DM17.
Thank
in
you
my
very much,
opinion.
Councillor Fuller. I'll defer then to Mr. Chick. If you're able to encompass that in a form of words and a view, that would be helpful.
Okay. So I haven't written down the highway safety issue yet. Because I was listening to Councillor Fuller when you first spoke against it, and you seem to be talking a lot about the sustainability of the site. So the two that I've written down, I'm going to blame it on the microphone, not me. The Island Plan Core Strategy identifies this application site as being situated outside of the defined settlement boundaries and thus falls within the wider rural area. The proposed development would result in 10 additional houses situated outside of the settlement boundary, away from services and facilities, which would result in an unsustainable form of development reliant on access by private car. The scheme would result in a form of development that would fail to comply with the principles of sustainable development as required by the established planning policy framework. The principle of the scheme is therefore considered contrary to policies SP1 and DM17 of the Island Plan Core Strategy and the National Planning Policy Framework. The other issue I think you were talking about was landscape character when you first spoke, but
Yeah.
I wrote down a reason for that. But I'm not quite clear whether your concern is about landscape impact, but what I've written is the proposed dwellings and associated access and parking turning areas would be detrimental to the rural character of the area by reason of the physical and visual impact they would cause, and would therefore conflict with the intention of the local planning authority to protect the character of the area, and would be contrary to policies SP5 and DM2 of the Island Plan Core Strategy. And you'll have to tell me if I've completely missed what you were intending. I mean, in terms of pavement and highway safety, obviously, when the planning authority goes into an appeal, and any decision that the planning committee makes shouldn't be fearful of an appeal, but officers should warn you about potential reasons that may not be supported, by the facts of the case. And now, having listened to what Mr. Troughton said in terms of the pavement and highway safety, his view was that yes, it would narrow the road, but it wouldn't narrow it so much that vehicles couldn't pass. Plus, people driving these vehicles would see one another, and therefore they would just naturally wait for another. Bearing in mind that it's a 30-mile-per-hour road, so people aren't travelling at great speed. So I would be concerned, particularly, when you look at the last two appeals that we've lost in highway safety, Sandown Airport, Buckbury Lane. Sorry, not Buckbury Lane, Landscape Lane up in Newport that I think Councillor Price was referring to. Refusing an application when you don't have technical support of Island roads can be quite tricky at an appeal. I'd also give those warnings to issues related to flooding, because the site is at low risk of flooding. It's not in flood zones 2 or 3. The flooding issue comes from drainage, not from flooding from a river or the sea. But officers are satisfied that because this is an outline application, those issues could be resolved by condition. But
I agree. I agree that there are grounds to mitigate against those issues, as there are potentially for highways grounds, and that was why I didn't actually push too much the highways principles. I think that it is a concern that we have. And if we refuse the application and the application comes back to us, we might get something a little bit more robust from what is good for the local community down at Wellow.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, that's my advice, and the committee, when it makes a decision, it's completely up to the committee what it does. And you've had those warnings. You can obviously ignore them if you choose to. That's absolutely fine. But my advice, as it always has been, is that when refusing a planning application, 1 or 2 very good reasons for refusal are enough. Doesn't need to be tacked on with others, when you're looking at potentially, defending it an appeal. But ultimately, it's the committee to decide what reasons are placed on it.
Thank you very much, Mr.
And I'm
Chair. I
happy
think
with
what we've learned, if anything, in terms of appeal is that the matters which are of a more qualitative basis as opposed to factual, i.e. as in highways safe or not, are going to be the more robust. But it seems to me, Councillor Fuller, that you've predicated your motion on that more individual qualitative basis. So I think are you happy essentially with the phrasing that Mr. Chick has put forwards? Councillor Lilly, you're the seconder. Are you happy on that basis? So we put that motion therefore to the committee, which is to reject this application on the grounds which have been set out and that have been very professionally a named vote. No, we don't need to have a named vote. So we go to the vote. Those in favour of the motion, which is to reject this application.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And against?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Thank you. So the casting vote falls to me, and I exercise that against, so that the motion, the application is refused. Thank you. We move on now to the second agenda item. If colleagues are happy to proceed, I appreciate this has been a long meeting and continues and threatens to be even longer. We are just going to take, as it were, an informal comfort break of just a few minutes. So in the event that anybody wishes to avail themselves of that, please do so. But we'll try to move on with all alacrity.
Yeah, can we bring this meeting together because
We're absent an officer, so I'm just waiting and I'm being indulgent of obviously everyone's needs. So I appreciate it's frustrating.
is there going to be a need for extension? Because we would have,
There will be, yes, yeah.
perhaps we should propose that before we start.
Well, I'll propose as soon as we're back in session. Yeah, absolutely. I don't anticipate that it's going to be rejected, but ultimately, as I have to be mindful of officers when there is a necessary comfort break. Go on. Thank you very much, everyone. Well, I will call us to order. First matter of business is to agree an extension. Now, I hope obviously it to be as limited as possible, but I anticipate that we probably will need the full hour. So I will propose the full hour, seconded by Councillor Andre. Those in favour? Thank you. I think that's carries. I appreciate. I think other councillors in a similar position. I should say, in fact, before we begin on this matter, that given the nature of it, that there will not be full voting rights for everyone. So my understanding, and officers will correct me, because it is deferred, it will be myself, Councillor Andre, Councillor Lilly, and Councillor Price only who are able to vote on this matter. However, everyone will be able to participate in terms of the debate and questions, but it is simply a matter of the constitution in regards to a deferred matter as to who is able to vote. So it's no reflection on anyone, obviously. Thank you, Councillor Fuller.
Gavin, you say that, but I'm not allowed to speak because I'm a local member and I called it in and I have a conflict of interest. So once the meeting starts, has the meeting started? I don't know whether it has, but I will be withdrawing to the balcony so I can view from up there.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Well, if you're happy to do that, that's
I'm happy to do
appreciated.
that. And can that please be noted?
Will be noted.
Just before I go, I did write to the head of planning the other day, and I'm hoping that he did receive my email because I haven't seen any late reps.
Mr. Bolton, if you wish to speak to that.
Excellent.
Yes.
Thank you.
Specifically.
Yes. Yeah. Mr. Bolter is pointing out the document that has been circulated to us in relation to that. Councillor Lilly.
On this this application, we've already debated it quite extensively previously, and it was actually agreed by this committee to defer it on the basis, because it was provisionally recommended for refusal, but we actually felt as a committee that there should be an opportunity for officers to come back, because we felt it could actually have conditional permission within that. So, I mean, if that is actually met, I would be proposing that we accept the application, and I'd be looking for a seconder.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lilly. I think I appreciate your point. We're putting the cart before the horse. So procedurally, I believe that I need to proceed on that basis, but I will defer to you immediately that is concluded, particularly as we have no public speaking element in relation to the same. So, Mr. Chick.
Yes, I'll try and go through this quickly and I'll speak up a bit. So, yes, councillors who were here will recall that this planning application is for 6 houses. The application site is outlined in red at the top of the left-hand slide. Just trying to get the pointer to work again. But you can see the, there we go. So the point of the cursor at the moment is the application site for the housing. There is proposal for 6 parking spaces about 90 metres to the southwest at the point of the cursor now at the end of Westwood Close. Application site is within Cowes. It's 0.8 kilometres from the town centre, as the crow flies. In terms of obvious reference finders, Westwood Park, the football ground, is just to the south of the site, and the orange road through here is the main road that is currently closed that takes you down to the Red Jet and Cowes town centre. The policy map from the island plan, which shows there's no designations relating to the site. The green areas of open space in this area, which is blessed with quite a lot of open space, but there are no other designations. And just on the slide showing the appearance of the area around the application site, Westwood Close is a little bit different to Parklands Avenue, which includes typical 1930s houses, whereas Westwood Close includes later red brick sort of faux Georgian houses built in the 1980s. And then some photographs of the application site, which is an area of vacant land. At the top of the close, it's got a wall in the middle of it that was used when it was an informal play area with a hard surface around it. The rest of the site is overgrown, and you can see the ends of properties in Westwood Close next to the application site. And then just looking in the opposite direction, looking towards Churchill Close, I think it's called, or Churchill Road, you can see the sort of treed boundaries in that location and the metal fence around the application site. And on the right-hand side, you can see the floodlights for Westwood Park. Then looking at Westwood Close at slight distance, you can see this is from the application site looking back towards Parklands Avenue. And you can see then Parklands Avenue in the bottom slide and the character of the houses there. So the proposals are for 6 houses. 2 of them arranged as a pair on the northern side of the site, and then a terrace of 4. Their dimensions would be the same as the existing houses in Westwood Close as it stands. And then the parking area you can see in this location here for 6 parking spaces. Then just showing the floor plans, so open plan on the ground floor, so dining, lounge and kitchen areas open plan, 2 bedrooms and a bathroom on the first floor. And then as you can see there, the designs directly replicating those of the existing houses in Westwood Close. And then just showing how the pair of semis would be arranged next to the existing houses, so same dimensions, and then the terrace of 4 alongside. So the application is now recommended for conditional permission because the unilateral undertaking has now been signed since the last committee that this went to, and the information related to biodiversity net gain has now been confirmed as acceptable by the council's ecologist, the planning ecologist, and therefore it's considered acceptable in all other respects and recommended for full conditional permission subject to the legal agreement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chick. Questions from anyone? Councillor Andre.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question for Neil Troughton. I recall that, and I've got the original comments here from Island Roads, that there were issues with the splay, for example, the lack of adequate visibility to the southwest, that the proposals were not in compliance with the standard. Have those issues been addressed? Because there were several issues that Island Roads did not comply with their standard.
Thank you, Councillor Andre. Mr. Troughton, and if I could ask you to speak up as well, because I think we've got an issue with the PA system, so that would be appreciated. Thank you very much.
The recommendation of Island Roads on behalf of the local highway authority has not changed since our original recommendation.
Thank you. Supplementary, Councillor Andre.
Okay, so in terms of highway safety, what are the, sorry if I can ask, what are the potential pitfalls, if you like, of it not complying with the standard?
Thank you. Perhaps if I direct that to Mr. Chick, as he may be able to provide a wider overview, Mr. Chick.
Yep, so the the speeds in Parklands Avenue are such that visibility splay, I think just over 20 metres is required to the northwest, and a visibility splay to the southwest should be 18 metres. It's deficient by 4 metres, so what can be provided is 14 metres. Now, Island Roads can only really object because of that, because it falls foul of highway guidance. But in the overall balance, officers have balanced that up and considered that there's no history of accidents at that junction. It's a close that has already, I think, 23 houses. This adds 6. And so our view was that on balance, it wouldn't justify refusal when considering the other improvements, the other benefits of the scheme, such as housing delivery. But that is our view, and it's only obviously advice from us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chick. Councillor Andre, does that answer it? Thank you. Any additional questions from? I'm conscious that Councillor Lee, prior to commencing, had proposed a motion, but I will just pause, if I may, Councillor Lee. Anything further? In which case, would you mind very kindly indulging me in just repeating the form of your proposal for the record?
My proposal is simply to accept the recommendation for conditional permission as the conditions set out by the officer.
Thank you.
Peter second.
Seconded by Councillor Andre. So, as I say, that this is essentially just a vote for myself, Councillor Andre, Councillor Lilly, and Councillor Price, given the nature of the Constitution. So, unless anybody wishes to ask anything further, everybody else is certainly able to contribute to the debate and questions. But I see no indication. So, in which case, we will move to the vote. So, those in favour of Councillor Lilly's proposal, unanimous.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Thank you.
If only all that easy.
That concludes that agenda item. So we move then to the final matter of the day, which is colloquially essentially the West Acre Judicial Review Learning Reports. I don't know whether officers wish to say anything directly to that. Mr. Bolter.
Thank you, Chair. Just effectively to very briefly introduce the paper. I'm sure councillors in the chamber will be more than aware of the history of the West Acre Park application. What the paper in front of you, I think, looks to do is to identify and take away the learnings from that process, and to reflect on those, and for the LPA to set out how it has adjusted its processes and how it will move forward when considering issues such as those raised through this process. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bolter. Councillor Lilly, I believe you wish to address on that.
Well, I have some quick questions, and then I of course wish to make a statement, being the ward councillor involved. I'd like actually to know, as a clarification, how much did Isle of Wight Council spend on the West Acre Park case? And my second question with that, who actually makes the decision for the Isle of Wight Council to go to, well, defend a challenge by judicial review? Those are my just two questions.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lee. Mr. Guard.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, Councillor Lee, for your question. Councillor Lee, I have the costs in front of me. I can split those down into internal, the cost of staff, and the cost of external legal advice, and the costs awarded against the council. Or I can just give you a total figure, which is you like. I've offered to email them to you separately. So would you like those broken down now for the record?
I think it would be good for members of this committee.
Thank you. So the costs I'm about to identify to the committee are costs that are incurred when I talk to officers' time, only the cost of legal officers' time. It does not include the cost of the officers of the local planning authority or the time of senior officers of the council, which will include the chief executive, directors, the head of legal services, and the monitoring officer, as they don't record. So essentially, in a very clicky way, what I'm telling you, Councillor and members of this committee, is that these costs that I'm about to give you on that line are only those officers in legal services who use a system that we have in place to record time against a file. And for the pre-action stage, the High Court stage, and the Court of Appeal stage, and also including the cost of travel and accommodation, the cost to the council based on officer time was £30,904.71. The external cost to the council, so that is going to be costs that we have paid out for out of legal budget for advice at the pre-action stage, at the High Court stage, and at the Court of Appeal stage, total £57,252. And the costs awarded against the council, which were awarded in a form that says 75% of the appellant's costs not to exceed £70,000, came out at £64,094.75. So totaling those three figures together, you have the £30,904.71, the £57,252, the £64,094.75, gives a total cost of £152,251.46. So that is the cost of the council, which includes officer time and all of the cost in legal services and all of the cost paid out by legal services for representation. And I can also, Councillor Lilly, answer your second question. So the decisions as to whether to defend legal proceedings are made by officers under delegated authority, having considered advice from learned counsel on the merits of its case.
Thank you, Mr. Guard. Councillor Lilly, a supplementary question.
No, I'm happy with that information.
Thank you.
Sorry, there was a figure that was put out in the press, which was much lower than this. So I'm glad that now the public have got the correct figure, but obviously it doesn't include non-legal officer time as stated by Mr. Guard. So it could actually be that that figure is much higher. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, indeed. Ben, thank you for your questions. And you have a statement, Mr. Councillor Lilly.
Yes, if I may, I'd like to read it out. The appeal court judges highlighted that residents' rights should have equal weighted balance in regard to an application as the applicant, the developer and landowner. I thank the Strategic Planning Officer for bringing forward a report as it at least acknowledges lessons need to be learned. But for me, it does not go far enough. And we should ensure there is equity of balance between residents' objectors and an applicant for planning permission. Judicial review is the only legal mechanism that residents have if they believe the council has not followed process and in their view made an unjust decision. A developer, however, can simply apply to the planning inspectorate to overturn a decision, their view as unfair. Residents do not have that route. Acre Park was not about wealthy objectors concerned about property values, but thousands of ordinary residents standing up for their community and its historic link to farming and natural environment. They were standing up for their human rights. Residents in my ward of Ryde Apley and Elphick were objecting to housing being built on agriculture and environmentally important land. This farmland and nature corridor has been unchanged for 1,000 years and is the last such corridor from the sea to the inner island, which naturally protects the special protected site of Ryde and Apley Sands. They were not against housing per se, it was their right for their material objections to be heard. They felt that they had no other course of action to seek justice than through the judicial review process. Many valid questions about issues such as sewage and road infrastructure, in my view, have never been properly addressed or answered. Judicial review protects residents' rights by ensuring a local authority acts lawfully, fairly and reasonably in their decision-making process. It has been proven they were right to pursue it. Thousands of residents contributed to crowdfunding to employ their own lawyers against the lawyers of the local authority, who you could argue were paid by them as council taxpayers. For me, this was always a fundamental flaw, and I wrote many times seeking collaborative ways to resolve concerns, but often I never even received a response. The time of the application and the consents, including the most recent, was made on the 22nd of December 2025, were during COVID or at holiday times such as Christmas. This alone put residents at disadvantage, as you only have 6-week window to apply to the court. One big lesson to be learned by the Isle of Wight Council and the wider community is how brilliant residents were in responding to every tight deadline with professionalism and a detailed case. We must remember that if there was not a case to be answered for, then it could not have been heard. A judge agreed that there was a case for judicial review. The Court of Appeal later agreed that there was a case for appeal, and however Isle of Wight Council argues the outcome, they lost on a point of law and the consent was squashed. Taxpayers' money was used to defend against the Residents Valley case, and I'm still waiting for the correct figure, which I've got tonight, which interestingly, I said, is estimated to be well over 150,000. So thank you, Mr. God, I got the right figure. Could this cost have been avoided? Residents happily raised the money. Lawyers agreed to fight in the final stages on a no-win, no-fee basis and put up deposited demands by the Isle of Wight Council, knowing they might lose. Shouldn't our council look at residents' motivation and their determination in order to learn some serious lessons? The Isle of Wight Council should always be open, transparent and willing to listen to residents and not adopt the adversarial stance they usually take. I believe there is a fundamental question of fairness, and of course, we ultimately exist to serve the public, not private enterprise. We are still left with a community aggrieved, including 2 parish councils who feel that they have not been listened to or heard. We must do better next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lilly. Councillor Andre.
Thank you, Chair. I do appreciate that this has been incredibly stressful and harrowing for everyone, not least of all our officers caught up in this, but I would like to focus on some positive outcomes that I think have come out of this. One of them is the implementation of a new constitution, the Councillor's Code of Good Planning Practice. I do have a question at the end of it. And revised training for committee members and chairs. There's a comment, investigate how to increase councillor attendance at the regular workshops. There's been quite a focus recently on all the committees of, quite rightly, I think, members undertaking required learning. So I would suggest, because of the importance of this, that those members that sit on planning committee, it is a requirement under their required learning that they attend the workshops. We all have reasons sometimes why we can't attend things, but I think that could potentially be strengthened. And my question is the final under page 94, paragraph 27, will undertake a planning committee best practice self-assessment toolkit, which has been launched by the LGA. How is this going to be implemented, please? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Andre. Mr. Bolter, are you able to answer those 2 points?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, excuse me. Thank you, Chair. Yes, so I think that's a really interesting question. Thank you, Councillor Andre. And the intention is to weave that into the training that we will be looking to give, probably following the local election in May, if that is held. That's the basis I'm working on at the moment. Well, I'll rephrase that. The training will be in May. To whom we give it remains to be seen. So that's the intention there, because I think that's an opportunity for self-reflection for all of us, officers included as well. And I think as councillors will also be aware, obviously there is a lot going on in terms of planning and changes to approach nationally. And just before Christmas, the Planning and Infrastructure Act came into force, and we are now awaiting further secondary legislation that will then actually mandate specific training for planning committee members. We anticipate that will be a nationally set training programme. We don't know what that's going to look like yet, but obviously as soon as we do get more information, we'll be able to sort of share that with you, particularly through the Wednesday workshops, to help have that conversation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bolter. I'm certainly keen to promote the workshops, but I'm also very much conscious of the fact that planning committee is, I would suggest, one of the most in terms of workloads. It is very significant, not only in terms of the site visits, engagement with residents, reading and understanding and ventilating all of the material, which is considerable. So I would be happy to hear any suggestions from colleagues if there is a better way we can structure those to make that more amenable, particularly in view of work and childcare commitments and such. Councillor Nye.
Thank you, Chair. It was a very technical point. And I agree, we should have the workshops, definitely. But the High Court didn't get it right at first instance. So I would say that, you know, take away what you need to take away from that. But it was a very technical point. And obviously the cost and the publicity of it was bad for Isle of Wight Council. But to be blunt, I don't think that we should beat ourselves up too much on this one, because it was an exceptionally technical point, and it was just a section 106, wasn't it? And that wasn't actually until it got to the appeal, as I understand it, that the actual Court of Appeal picked that point up. The High Court didn't pick it up. So it might be a bit of a big ask to expect people like us to be able to identify things like that. That's all I'm saying. But I agree with Debbie, we should attend the workshops. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nye. So yeah, moving on, I think essentially we're noting the paper that the officers have put together, and my thanks to them for that. Yes, certainly. It's definitely been a difficult process, and I think what I take away from it essentially is that it's essentially the dearth of mechanism that government gives to us to ventilate planning matters effectively at a grassroots community issue. And I think, as Councillor Lilly has said explicitly, the fact that residents will have to go to that extreme. I make no comment on the merits of it, but simply as a mechanism, I think it's insufficient. But that's a matter for government. But ultimately, I think what everyone does here, what officers and what colleagues do, is take planning matters incredibly seriously, spend a great deal of time, as we have done tonight. So I'm conscious of not wanting to continue that further. Unless anyone wishes to say anything else, I'll draw matters to a conclusion. Councillor Lilly.
Can I just say that we did have, you know, this has been going on for many years, And there was a good debate regarding the island plan. And one of the things I think in the new, well, the draft proposed island plan is to look at the way we bridge more to the community and to residents and actually listen to them. And that has been emphasized. And Mr. Brewer worked very hard on listening to parish and town councils to actually bring that into the new plan. So I think it's important we need to note that. But I think we just should note the report now.
Thank you. Yes, I don't think we need a formal vote as far as I'm aware. We're just happy to note it. So on that basis, thank you very much for your time. That draws us to a conclusion. Thank you. Oh, sorry, I apologise. Members' questions. I've in my haste. I apologise. Councillor Price.
I'm so sorry. I'm just going to bring just one quick little thing up. It is regarding to some possible enforcement action. It's something that's not in my ward. It's in Councillor Brodie's ward. I have emailed into enforcement about it, but it involves something that has a direct impact on residents of my ward. It's been described by the press quite eloquently as a monstrous erection up on Staplers Road. And it relates to a telecommunications mast that's I think 13.5 meters tall. I mean, it looks shamefully inappropriate. It doesn't conform to its original permission from 2017, and is, you know, it's woefully undisguised. And it is a real blight on something that looks quite nice until they put that there. Could I just sort of, you know, stress anything that can be done to disguise it would be really welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Price. Mr. Bolter, could you speak to that? And perhaps it'd be helpful to know. I know that the applicant has defended themselves in terms which I feel I deprecate, because I think essentially they are acting outside, if not necessarily of what they're permitted to do, but certainly of the community wishes. And I think, as Councillor Price has said, when it is something that is so stark and in such a prominent location, actually their arrogance I find very concerning.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to confirm, we do have a open enforcement file on this matter. We have written to them explaining our views quite clearly. And I think because there is that ongoing formal process, as I said, we do have an open enforcement case. So I don't think I can really say anything beyond what I've said now in this arena. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bolter. We, however, don't have such a circumscription. So I think it's probably fair to say that if this comes back in any form, that we will take a very dim view of that approach, because, as you say, it is a monstrous carbuncle, to echo other comments from a higher point. That draws us to a conclusion, I think. Thank you very much. Thank you.